Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Shema podcast. I have an important topic to discuss with you today, and we have the perfect guest, Devorah Kigel, to aid us on this journey and educate us. But it's really around relationships. And now, when I bring her on, she's going to sort of tackle this from the side of the woman's perspective. But I want to begin by sort of tackling it from the perspective of the guys that we really need to do our work with. The area of relationships is an area where us as Jews have been, or the majority of us have been so influenced by the outside world. We're supposed to have been a light to the other nations. Unfortunately, a lot of us are getting all their distorted light, and it's become very blemished in this area. However, I believe it is the women who will help Clay Israel, all of us, rectify this. Now, you're probably thinking, Dan, well, you're just kissing up to your wife. My wife doesn't listen to podcasts, okay? She hasn't listened to me enough. She doesn't want to listen to me more. But the reason I believe this to be so is because if you look at all the key figures that got us to Mount Sinai to become a nation, starting with Sarah, Rivkah, and Leah, and then even going to Miriam as a young child, when her father separated from his wife after the decree of Paro was going to kill all the Jewish young boy infants. He separated from his wife, and as a leader, everyone followed suit. But Miriam, a young age, with wisdom, rebuked her father and said, Paro is only killing the Egyptian boys. You're killing the boys and the girls. And in his humility, he accepted that, rejoined with his wife, and as a result, had Moshe Rabbeinu. And throughout everything leading up to Mount Sinai and every sin that we did, from the sin of the golden calf to the complaining about not having meat, you know what one group never participated in any of that? It was the women. They are the ones that kept us together and allowed our Creator to forgive us. So sorry, guys. I believe that the women will get us out of this. And I'll begin by saying that, everyone wants to be normal. You want to be normal. You don't want to be a weirdo, but you really have to think about what is normal behavior. It, by definition, means the majority are engaging in that behavior. That's all it means. It's a popularity contest of behaviors. And when we have found ourselves in the outside world, we found ourselves wanting to be normal like everyone else. But normal behavior does not mean rational behavior. It doesn't mean it's logical. It's not based on reason. It's just the majority are doing it. And as Rabbi Ken Spiro eloquently said on our last podcast, we inherited the family business from Abraham. And the reason he got that task, and we got this in his merit, is because do you think his behavior was normal at all? It was totally abnormal. He was a total extremist. No one was acting like him. Everyone was praying to idols, these clay figurines. Everyone was acting in a very selfish way, and he went off on his own and just did acts of kindness. And when people wanted to afford honor to him for that kindness, he said, no, not me. Give honor to our Creator. Total rebel, total weirdo. And I will tell you that in the area of relationships with the opposite sex, where my mind initially became corrupted was at the age of 7. I'll tell you, that's when it happened. I was thinking about this. And it's because of a show I used to watch every day after school, and it was Happy Days. Now, those of you who are my age group know what I'm talking about, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, really, Dan? That was such an innocent show. The 1950s, Richie Cunningham, that corrupted you? All right, think about it. Was your hero on the show Richie, Ralph Mouth, Potsy? No, they were the nerds. Who did we look up to? The Fonzie. And we all wanted to be like the Fonz. What made him so cool? For one, he was tough. He could beat up anyone with one arm behind his back, barely breaking a sweat. And that was awesome. But as we talked about in the episode a few times ago on the exile of Edom, that is what they stole from the Babylonians, that a man is strong because he can overpower another man. And we discussed that that's not how Torah defines strength. You want to see what a key figure, a Torah figure, would be like in an action movie? It's not that the heroes in the bar and the biker gang comes in, he beats them all up. It's that the heroes at the bar, someone comes in, insults him in front of everyone, humiliates him, and him with total equanimity says, He's a messenger from Hashem, and I understand the message. And now I need to go do teshuvah. That's the hero. That's strength. But the other thing about Fonzie, of course, is he would snap his fingers and all the ladies would come drape their arms over his shoulder. And he'd walk out of the bar with the ladies. He got lots of girls. That was so cool. Now I was 7. The idea of a woman or a girl putting her arms on me or kissing me, oh, that was gross. But I knew that's how I should be. That's what I should want. And it shaped me and it formed me. And it's so wrong because, as we discussed before too, the reason we have a bris milah is not a mitzvah that we complete when we're 8 days old. It's completed when we're 8 days old, gentlemen. So when we see that part of our anatomy, we remember the covenant. We remember that it is our life goal to become a man to overcome that. You think the heavens are cheering when they see a dog have an urge and mate with another dog? No, that's their natural instinct. And no one's cheering when a man pursues that urge either. A man is someone that overcomes it. So Fonzie was actually acting very effeminate. Men have to bring a masculine giving energy to a relationship. And I heard this a lot when I was engaged with the secular world, talking to guys, and they would say, the marriage isn't going very well, Dan. I mean, it was great at first when we were dating. That when we first got married, she couldn't keep her hands off me. It was amazing, but she wants nothing to do with me anymore. And now I understand why. Because there's a pattern that Hashem creates in the world, my friends, and that is just like he created this spiritual cocoon for us in the wilderness, amazing paradise, where it was like a 5-star hotel in those clouds of glory. Everything was being provided for us, AC, food, water, and all we did was focus on a relationship with our Creator. After 40 years, Hashem said, did you like the way this relationship worked? Isn't it amazing? We said, oh, yes, we love this. This is incredible. He said, great. Now go in the land of Israel. I'm going to hide myself behind nature and now go earn that relationship with me. And we are still working on that today. But he does the same thing in relationships. He creates these feelings that we have. And after a while, he pulls it away and says, did you like that? Great. Now go earn it. So my friends, I see a lot of guys when that goes away, when Hashem pulls his energy away, coming with this feminine energy of wanting to take. Of course, the woman is no longer interested. She wants to bring the feminine energy, and you're bringing the feminine energy as well. So I think what we all need to do, and I'm looking at myself in the Zoom, we need to study our ksuba, our ketubah. That is the guidelines for how to be a man. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it is our contract that we sign before we get married. Now, many men will sign a premarital agreement because what they're trying to do is protect their assets in case the woman doesn't make me happy anymore. I can leave and I can leave with my assets. Let me tell you something. For us Jews, Hashem does not care about that contract. It's null and void. What he cares about is the ksuba. And if you study it, all it is the woman's giving us exclusivity. Everything else we provide to them. We are supposed to be givers. We are supposed to be the sun in the relationship, getting our light from Hashem and reflecting it back on our wife. And then she is like the moon and she reflects it back to us stronger. So we need to get our act together in that area. So I want to now turn it over from the lens of the women. And before I bring our guest on, I want to give an analogy. I want you to imagine, ladies, that you are the director of HR and the board of directors is calling a emergency meeting. And they announced to everyone, the CEO does, that the CFO just resigned. And he's impressing upon everyone, all of you, the importance of replacing our chief financial officer. It's so imperative to the organization. And the director of human resources says, I'm on it. I will find us a replacement. And after some time goes by, she calls the follow-up meeting and announces to the board, I found him. I found the perfect CFO for our organization. And the CEO says, wonderful. Tell us about the interviewing process, how you found this person for us. And she says, well, fortunately, there was a lot of available candidates on the databases. So I had a lot to go through. So I just sort of flipped through their profiles and I found a guy so handsome. I was like, he really looks like a great CFO. He's really handsome guy. So I set up the first interview at this really quaint bar that I really like. It has music, but it's not too loud so you can talk. It's a nice environment. And as soon as he sat down next to me at the bar, we just clicked. It was so great. I mean, we were laughing nonstop the entire time. And I connected with him so much. I felt right then and there, this is the guy. Now, the next day I sensed it, but I didn't remember a lot of what we discussed because we got pretty drunk. I'll admit, we did take a cab home. We're responsible, but I forgot a lot. We got pretty wasted. But I remember that we were quoting a lot of movie lines from our favorite comedian, Will Ferrell. And I took him to go see, for the second interview, that latest Will Ferrell movie. It was hilarious. And when we got there, you're not going to believe it, but when we were at the concession stand, he likes popcorn and Thin Mints like me. He liked the exact same snacks. And we were watching the movie together, and we just had an amazing time. And I was sold then, but I decided to have a third interview because I know that's protocol. And we went and rode go-karts just to change it up a little bit. And his antics, I mean, he was just, again, cracking me up the entire time. It was so amazing. So I'm here to report that he is perfect. I have not been able to stop thinking about him ever since. And I really think we should make an offer to him pronto. And of course, you can imagine what the board of directors is thinking. They look at her and say, what are you talking about? We want you to find out if he was capable as a chief financial officer. We want you to see if his values align with ours, if his vision for growth aligned with ours, if he fit into our corporate culture. You didn't even check his references. Why didn't you do any of this? And she's like, ugh. First, I don't want to check his references. That's prying too much. And really, all the other stuff, it's dry. You just got to feel it, you know? And that's what everyone in HR does now. Now, you get where I'm going with this, ladies. Is this how you approach dating? You would never do that in a hiring situation, but we take it less seriously when we approach dating. And this goes for the guys too. But again, I know this is going to resonate more with the women. So I'm counting on you, ladies. We're going to bring on Devorah Kigel, a dating coach, speaker. I'm at her website looking at everything she coaches on, and she has a new book, which I want to allow her to talk about. And I'm really looking forward to bringing her on and answering my questions. Now, I will say this before I bring her on, just to be totally honest. I spoke about this with her earlier this week. I was hesitant. Like, how can I bring something to the table here to speak on the behalf of women on this topic? And I spoke about it with my 18-year-old daughter, Yona, who's extremely bright, extremely mature young woman. She told me, Dad, do this. It's important. Her and her friend McCall wrote down some amazing questions and things that they're thinking about. And one of the things she said too, is she said, Dad, you know what you can bring to the table? I said, what? And she said, you can make sure that none of my holy sisters date anyone who is like you in your 20s. And I said, I agree. Amen. I am for that.
Welcome to the Shema Podcast, the podcast for the perplexed, where Torah insights intertwined through personal stories as well as interviews with leading Torah scholars demonstrate the empowering qualities of Torah and mitzvot. For more great Torah learning through Torch, the Torah Outreach Center of Houston, go to torchweb.org. Now to the show.
Welcome to the show, Devorah. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved your analogy, by the way. I really went with it. You really fleshed it out. It was amazing. And it's something that I often tell my dating coaching clients that, we should really approach our dating life quite similarly to our professional life. Meaning, if you wanted a new job in your field and you heard that your uncle's sister's cousin's sister-in-law's friend was in this field, you would 100% send them your resume and say, hey, can you please, forward this to him? I'm looking for a new job in that field, and I really could use your help with networking. You would do this with zero shame and zero hesitation. But somehow when it comes to our dating life, we get all weirded out by trying to network for a husband, right? It's the same exact process, and you should feel just as confident, capable, and calm about doing that with your dating life as you do with your professional life. But we somehow get all like, oh, it's so desperate. It's not desperate. I think it's very assertive. I think it's great. I wanted to also circle back on something you said, which was great, which is that, the bris milah is really just a sign of the covenant. And the covenant is that we should be holy, right? As Jews, we're meant to be holy. And what is holiness? Primarily, it's using our physical drives for higher purposes. So I don't know if we wanted to jump to this right away, but I grew up, I win the award for least likely person to become an Orthodox Jew across America.
Yes, I wanted you to share your background because it helps a lot.
What really was interesting to me is that I was an atheist and grew up Reconstructionist, which is similar to Reform. I didn't meet an Orthodox Jew till I was 24 years old when I came to New York City for my first job. And what attracted me the most to traditional Judaism was this. It wasn't God. I didn't believe in God. It was, I heard about this Jewish way to date, and I heard that Yosef Hatzadik, Joseph, the reason that he's the only person in the Torah referred to as a righteous person, why is he given that moniker? Because he was in a very, very difficult situation with Mrs. Potiphar, who the sources tell us, switched her outfits 25 times a day and was very seductive. She was a married woman and she kept trying to seduce him. And he was a 17-year-old teenage kid. I have a 17-year-old boy. Like, that's a really hard test. And yet he escaped from her clutches by the skin of his teeth, literally like by a minute millimeter, he passed this test. And him overcoming his, what we call the Yetzer Hara, the more base physical drives, his instinct, as you said, the fact that he overcame that gave him this title of righteous person. Additionally, in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, it says, who is strong? The person who conquers his baser drives. So this literally is what drew me to Judaism. It wasn't some lofty, spiritual experience I had that came much later. What first did it for me was I felt like, I'm in my low to mid 20s, my entire life. I've been looking at what's going on with the hookup culture and unfortunately, participating in the secular quote unquote dating world and feeling like this is so disrespectful to women. But where is there another option? Should I be Amish? Should I be Mormon? Where can I find a dating system that will enable me to meet a mensch, meet a good guy and marry him? And little did I know that it was in my very own tradition in Judaism that we have these beyond genius ideas of how to get to know someone in a safe space, in a clear, confident, respectful way, and really make good choices, really, which is the most important choice of our life, is who to marry. So none of us want to be in the 50, 60% divorce rate. So Judaism teaches us how to do this in a really smart way. And the book that I wrote was really distilling my own journey with my train wreck of a dating journey, as well as all of the things that I learned along the way about Jewish dating techniques. And then, thank God, the last 12 years that I've been coaching women in dating, thank God I'm about to have my 310th client get engaged. And so there are a lot of little vignettes in the book from my clients to really, hit the points home and show people how it really works in real time.
So I will say that that's something you share with my daughter, because back when we were living in the suburbs, this is what got her too, because I was sort of wanting to move to a community. She wasn't ready. I had come from a class that Rabbi Wolbe teaches. I didn't do a good job at keeping the class focused. So they went off on this tangent of asking him about dating and everything. It's the first time I ever heard it too. The class was amazed by it. And I got home, my daughter asked, how was class? And I told her about this whole thing that we'll be discussing. I approached the subject by saying, you got to check this out. I literally said, it's so weird, because it is weird, because it's not normal, which is a good thing. And I explained to her and she goes, I don't understand. Isn't that how everyone does it? I was like, no one, I don't remember anyone does it that way. It's like, well, that just makes sense. And she goes, how'd you do it? And I was like, I went out to bars with my friends and got drunk and found a cute girl and asked for a phone number. It didn't work out. And I tried it again. And I finally met your mom. She was like, no offense, Dad, but that doesn't make any sense at all. And she told me yesterday when we were talking over Shabbos, she said, when I told her that your story, she said, tell her that's my story too. So
yeah, it's so many of our stories. And that's why I feel like, look, when we go through challenging experiences, I feel like the way to make them meaningful is to help other people through that situation. So I don't think it's an accident that I've become a dating and marriage coach, because I really had a train wreck of a dating life. And my marriage, I married someone from a very different culture. My husband came here from Russia when he was 5. And if you met him, you would think, what do you mean? He's American. But you know what? He really does come from a different culture. And we had to work very, very hard on our communication because the Russian style of communication is very different. And so thank God I've been able to help other women through like figuring out how to communicate better with one's husband and how to communicate your needs in a way that doesn't get his defenses up and, intimacy and on and on and on. So I feel like, and we've been through financial issues together. Like you get to our age and you've been through enough tests that hopefully you can impart some wisdom learned through those tests to other people going through that experience. I think it's Ben Franklin that says, experience is a dear school, but a fool will learn at no other. So like, why do you have to go through all of the trauma that I went through in my dating life? Read the book and like learn all the things that I wish I had done differently,
Right. It's a purpose for everything.
100%.
Nothing would make you as quality of a coach in this area if you didn't go through some negative experiences yourself.
Right. And in a way, like, I coach women who are from completely secular backgrounds all the way to fully religious and everything in between, every age, second marriages, et cetera. And I feel like, a lot of the women tell me, I feel like I can tell you anything. And I've told you stuff that I don't even tell my parents, my friends, the guy I'm dating, no one, only you. I don't even tell my therapist this sometimes, because they just feel like it's a zero judgment zone. Because again, what foot am I going to stand on? Like I've never been speaking to a client and been like, oh my gosh, that's so shocking. Like that's never happened, So a lot of the women I work with just feel very comfortable, divulging things, which is important.
I'm sure it's very comforting when you can say like, yeah, I did that too. Right.
And yeah, exactly. And this is not going to lead you in the right direction. Let's choose a different option.
Before we step into the sort of the Q&A, tell everyone the name of the book and where they can find it.
So the book is called Marry a Mensch, Timeless Jewish Wisdom for Today's Single Woman. It is on Amazon. The best way for people to reach me is through my website, Devorah with an H, Kigel, DevorahKigel.com. And everything's Devorah Kigel, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Through my website, you can download a free chapter of the book. The first chapter is free and you can get a sense for my writing style. And I wrote the book as like, we're sitting on a couch schmoozing. That's really how I wanted people to feel when they're reading it. It's not like, preachy or whatever. It's just like, we're having fun talking and I'm sharing stories with you and practical advice. So DevorahKigel.com, the free chapter can be downloaded and you can order it directly from my website, or you can go on Amazon and just type in Marry a Mensch. Tomorrow actually is the official release date on Amazon. This is going to be released about September 9th. It is released on Amazon. And I'm really hoping that we get this information out to as many women as possible. Stay tuned for the sequel for guys.
All right.
I'll have to write that in conjunction with my husband.
Definitely want to be able to interview after that as well. But if you didn't write that down, all those links are at the bottom of the body of this podcast in the description field. So you can click on that and go right to any of those sites. All right. So you ready to hop into the Q&A that my daughter and her friend Michal prepared?
Let's go for it.
Okay. So the first question is, and I know from looking at sort of the summary of the book that you address a lot of this in your book, but how do you know if your deal breakers are reasonable or not?
Great. So I get this question a lot. The deal breaker list, I don't even remember when I came up with this, but it's really my most important tool in coaching. So this is a list of approximately 10 items. Think the 10 commandments, right? Not 20 and not 5, but around 10. If it's 12, I won't show you, but around 10. What's interesting is that, and this will be, again, why I can't write this book for men by myself. I need my husband to help me, but men generally have a much shorter list, maybe 3-4 items. She's cute. Let's go. Right. Whereas for women, we're like, no, but this from my childhood. Okay. So basically around 10 items, what goes on your list? So we want to make this list only non-negotiable, like must-haves or absolute deal breakers. I can't negotiate. This is not a list of preferences. This is a list of absolutes. Character traits, in Hebrew, we call these midos, or personality traits. We're not going to put any physical attributes on this list, even though it's very tempting, because sometimes we want to leave God open to his magic. And oftentimes I've noticed that God puts your person, your bashert, your intended one, into a physical package that you wouldn't have necessarily thought was quote unquote your type, right? And this often happens to women where they're like, no, but my type is this. And I'm like, you know what? You have to be attracted, and I won't let you get engaged to someone you're not attracted and excited about. But sometimes we have this mental picture in our head, whether it's from a first boyfriend or a movie we watched or whatever. And then along comes our basher, and he might be a little shorter, or he might be in a different profession, or he might be from a different cultural upbringing, in my case. And yet this is the right person for you. So it'd be a real shame if we put something on there and disqualified someone for a very superficial reason that really doesn't make any sense in the long run. So this is a list of non-negotiables, personality traits, character traits that are just you cannot compromise on. On the negative side of that list, like some people like to do 5 and 5, like the 10 Commandments. So on the negative side, I call them airborne peanut allergies. These are the visceral triggers, usually coming from your family upbringing, that literally are like nails on chalkboard, drive you bananas. You can't marry someone like this. Now, what's interesting is that everyone has a unique list. I've been doing this for 12 years with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women. You'd think everyone's list is the same. Nice, right? Like giving. Okay, but everyone's list is so different. So that's what's fascinating about this work, is that we each have a unique fingerprint and we each have a unique deal breaker list. So the negative is the airborne peanut allergies, and the positive side is the must-haves, and around 10 items.
Okay.
Oh, so how do you develop this list? I want you to start with your parents. As daunting as this is, parent, much of who we choose to date and then subsequently marry is related to our parents for good and for bad. So first, we want to think about our parents. If you're a girl out there, you want to particularly think about your father. There might be things about him that you absolutely like so respect and want in your future spouse. And there might be things that are allergies for you. Then you want to move on to your dating history, if you have any dating history. Like, why did you break up with that boy, 6 months ago, who was a perfectly nice person, a normal person, but there was a trait about him that literally drove you bananas? That goes on your airborne peanut allergy list. Then you could even move on to friends of yours. Why do we gravitate to certain friends and we just click with them right away? Usually there's a trait there that we're very drawn to. And there might be, let's say if you landed in college and you have 3 or 4 roommates, or for the religious girls, seminary, right? And you had 3 or 4 roommates, 3 of them you got along with great. And then there was one girl you were like, oh my gosh, like literally I cannot even be in the same room as her. That's an airborne peanut allergy. So that goes on your list as well. I always offer this for free to anyone who listens to a podcast that I'm on or runs into me at a speaking engagement. I'm happy to do this as just a freebie. If you want to reach out to me on my website or Instagram or Facebook or anywhere and send me your deal breaker list, I'm happy to look it over and just tell you if it's normal. Obviously, I won't be able to tell you because I don't know you. Like when I meet with a client for the first time, I really get to know them, their family history, their dating history, and then we make the deal breaker list. And of course, I'm going to be able to say, okay, I think you missed one based on this relationship that you had 2 years ago. Obviously, without knowing someone, I can't make those types of adjustments, but I can certainly tell you if this strikes me as a normal list. There aren't 2 attributes that are diametrically opposed, opposite to each other. That's obviously unrealistic. Don't want anything physical on there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm happy to do that if anyone wants to reach out to me.
That's great. I have seen, back when I was in my 20s and I hung out with like a group of people that included girls, but when they were, we were friends, and some of the things they would have on their list were things as silly as when I gave in my analogy as I want them to like eating popcorn and Thin Mints. I think back to my marriage. We've been married 22 years. What we were interested in, 22 years ago is not the things that we are interested in today. Do you see some of that where people put things they're sort of interested in now and they want that?
Right, totally. It's a great point. This is completely and utterly irrelevant. Like if we have the same, choice of music, favorite music, or movies, or like, popcorn, like your favorite snack, these are totally irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, which is why I really feel like everyone could benefit from a dating mentor. And it doesn't have to be an official dating coach like myself, but What are the qualifications for a dating mentor? Happily married for 10 years or more. Why? Because only when you're married 10 years or more do you realize, oh, wait, that really didn't matter. And what really matters is what we call in Hebrew a lev tov, a good heart and a growth mindset. These are my two across the board for everyone on planet Earth, the two most important deal makers is a lev tov, a good heart, and a growth mindset. Because as you know, marriage is all about growth. I'm married 25 years. It's like literally we're different people than we started off this marriage. So your interests are not really what's important. Your goals, your values, your vision for the future. Does this match this other person? Do you have mutual respect in this relationship? Do you see the world a similar way? I will add that I feel like sense of humor is very much underrated. What do I mean by that? I think the reason people find the same things funny is because they actually look at the world the same way. And that's why they think that's funny. So it's
Okay.
not just like, oh, I want him to be funny and crack jokes. Rather, I want to share this same sense of humor. I want to find what he says funny is actually a very deep mitzvah. It's a very deep character trait because it means that the two of you look at the world in a similar way and therefore you find the same things funny. So I actually think it's a really important thing to look for.
I
But
love that
anyway,
you said that.
you're absolutely right that we really want to be focused on the deep things that are going to get you through hopefully a lifetime and eternity of happily married life.
At the Shabbos table, my daughter's regularly annoyed at my humor and more annoyed that my wife thinks I'm so funny. And she doesn't get it, but now that makes total sense.
Exactly. My husband's always like, she's still laughing at my jokes after 26 years. It's crazy. Right. So that's actually very significant. But you're right. Interests, those types of, tastes in music or movies, this is completely irrelevant.
Okay, great. All right. Next question is, how do you know if it's time to begin dating and pursuing a marriage?
So for the listeners out there that are more in the religious world, I think we put, unfortunately, too much pressure on the girls to start dating very young. If you are a very mature individual and feel like your desire to give to another person is overflowing, that's the litmus test, in my opinion, of when do I know I'm ready to date for marriage? When I feel like I'm so filled up with giving that I want to just like give. And it's just like bursting out of me. That's a good sign that a girl is ready to date for marriage. Until that time, honestly, honey, just relax. Like, it's okay. You're going to have the rest of your life to worry about other people. I always tell single girls, like, enjoy this time in your life. Enjoy the parsha, as we say, that you're in. Don't rush. Like, take your time. If you're back from seminary or, if there are more secular girls listening, if you're in college, don't rush into doing this. Like, take some time to travel, figure yourself out, listen to podcasts, read self-help books, do some therapy, learn about Judaism. There are so many amazing things to fill yourself up and make you an interesting person and do the self-work that you need to do, which everyone needs some self-work, some more than others, before you jump into dating for marriage. You will have plenty of time to pursue that, later. But you will never get this time in your life back where you only have yourself to think about, as we know, right? So enjoy it and don't rush.
I'm so glad you said that because, growing up in the secular world, and then now we're in a Jewish community for 4 years, and, our friends grew up religious, like you get married young, and it is like this idea, like, if you're not married when you're 25, it's just like,
You're a senior citizen. Yeah,
right, exactly. Versus, where we grew up, you begin to actually start thinking about the process at age 25. My daughters don't want to wait that long, but she's definitely thinking like, I want to finish college and seminary. There is some pressure because that is the norm in a lot of the religious communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that each person needs to figure this out for themselves and like really have your finger on the pulse of your own personality. There's no one size fits all. I have 2 married daughters. They were both, my oldest straight off the plane from seminary started dating. That was not necessarily a choice, just someone had a suggestion. And 2 years later, she was married, or met him at least, and got married. And my second daughter, I told her, I'm not even talking to you about this until Hanukkah. Okay, so they come home from seminary in June. I was like, do not even speak to me about this until Hanukkah. And then, Baruch Hashem, a year later, she met him. So it really depends on the person, but I very much believe that if you are feeling at 20, 21, like you're not ready, fine. Like there's no, I want to pull the camera back on this topic and really remind us all, and this is something I regularly remind my clients about, whether they are religious or not, religiously observant or not, is that God is the shachan, the matchmaker with a capital S or M, depending on which word you're using. We can get very like anxious, especially girls get very anxious and caught up and like nervous and, shidduch crisis and this and that. And like, oh my gosh, and like what I'm looking for, everyone tells me I'm not going to find it. And what I'm here to remind everyone that God has not left the steering wheel unattended. And in my job, Baruch Hashem, thank God, like it's really a great, what we call emuna, faith, and bitachon, trust training ground for myself. Like when I see, we're well over 300 now, of clients married. When I see these women who are all in different stages of life, different ages, different religiosity, different cultures. And then Hashem, God has their perfect person picked out for them that matches their deal breaker list to a T. And they're excited about him. And they thought they would never find someone. It reinvigorates my faith. I've been religious for, a quarter of a century at least. And it's still, for me, it makes my week when one of my clients get engaged. It's like, it's a happy business, I always say, but it really reinvigorates myself. All of us are in the same game of life. No one goes through life without a serious amount of challenges. It's not just you get married and sail off into the sunset like a Disney movie. There are so many challenges that life throws us. And we've got to be like reinforcing our faith daily to remind ourselves God's in charge. Even though the matchmaker said, honey, you're never going to find what you're looking for, or you have to lose 50 pounds or this or that, or what. It's ridiculous. Hashem can do anything. So of course we have to put our best foot forward, but you don't have to become a different person. One of the things that I say often is that my husband dated someone before me you'll relate to this because you're like from the South and Midwest and all that. And she was from Ohio and she was like so nice. And my husband ended it with her because he said, I'm never going to accomplish anything in my life with this girl. Like everything I do is going to be fabulous. Right. And he married me instead, because I'm very driven and I'm a very big go-getter. I'm a little bit of a recovering perfectionist. And so like, there is no such thing as mediocre in my world. You know what I mean? So thank God, like I'm not a naggy person and I just do my own thing, but like it's embarrassing to be married to me if you're going to be a slacker, you know what I'm saying? So my husband just like, I rubbed off on him over the last 25 years and that's what he chose. That's what he wanted. That's the most beautiful thing about marriage, I think, is that just by osmosis, we rub off on each other. So therefore, for my singles out there, you want to make sure that when you're dating this person, there are traits about them that you want to acquire for yourself, that there are things about them that you really, really admire and respect and like have been looking for. So on my side of things, I very much was looking for someone with a very, very warm, positive, lack of temper, easygoing, fun personality. I chose that on purpose and I got that. And this is a very important point that I want to share with your listeners, which is that there's a shadow to every gift. I think Hannah Levitan talks about that there's every good trait. My mother used to say this to me. If you're attracted to a trait, if that's like something really important to you, then you can't complain about the negative expression of that same trait, meaning there's a flip side to every coin. So if someone is like really fun and upbeat and like spontaneous and like fly by the seat of his pants and like, yeah, everything's just like fabulous. Okay. So the flip side of that is he might not pay his credit card bill on time every time. Right. Or he might be a little bit last minute, or he might not be super organized. So you have to decide for yourself, like which of those two things is more important, or should I come more to the middle on both of those traits because I can't handle either extreme. I chose very purposefully that the most important thing to me was a positive demeanor and a positive personality. And we call this an ayin tova, right? A good eye. Like my dedication in the beginning of the book to my husband is that he always sees the best in me. And that's really something I needed based on my own family of upbringing. I needed someone who's just like, you're doing great, Devorah. Like, you don't need to beat yourself up. You're doing awesome. That's what I needed. That's what I chose. And we really want to be very clear in our deal breaker list about those types of things.
When you were speaking about the woman your husband was dating first and why he preferred you, it made me think of that verse in the Torah that Eve would be his helper and be against him. Because, and this is not, I can change the guy, but our wives do make us better because they know when to push us. And that was what makes them our helper, to
100%.
bring out the best in ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And the challenge for women, and stay tuned for the sequel about marriage, but our challenge as women is to inspire our husband by being Ezer Kenegdo, right? A helper opposite him, to inspire him to be his best self and draw out his potential in a way that doesn't smush him, that doesn't, steamroll him, that is respectful. And I've worked extremely hard on that in my own life because I tend to speak very assertively and very directly. And so I've had to really, really work on, this is 25 years of work, to just phrase things in a nicer, softer way, because that's what works. And I'm a very big pragmatist. So if something's not working, why are you still doing it? Let's try something new, right? So going back to dating, many of my clients, they've been around and around the hamster wheel, as I was in my single life, going out with the same type of guy. 6 weeks, same thing happens. And why is this happening to me? Mrs. Kigel, I don't understand. Why is it happening to me again? Oh, because we're not dating properly. Let's try to do something different, right? It's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Let's try something different,
That leads to the next question. I think you gave a hint at an answer, a part of the answer to this question, but it's, what would you say to women who are becoming discouraged in the dating scene? And what I thought about was when you said you help them create their list. Are there a peanut allergy and that? And you talked about when you go on a date and you realize, oh, I don't like that. You're tweaking the list, you're refining it. So to me, it would seem like that would help with the discouraging, that you're not getting the outcome you want, but you're refining the process. But I'll let you add more to that.
Right. So I'm a big believer that, first of all, rejection is just redirection. So if a guy breaks up with you, or if someone breaks up with you, you don't need to take this into yourself. I always say, everyone can't marry everyone. So obviously there's going to be some rejection on both sides. You know what I mean? Right. It's just part of the process. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means he's not your person or she's not your person. Great, move on. As far as when you break up with someone, so again, we don't want to compromise on the things that are most important to us. So that's really our list. Our list is our GPS instructions to find the right person for us. If you've made a reasonable list, you should get everything on your list if you've made a reasonable list. So that is our it's a unique custom made instructions to find the right person for you. As far as getting discouraged, this is part of my job, is to be everyone's Emunah and Bitachon cheerleader, and to, share anonymous stories from my clients. That's why I really wrote the book, also to give people hope, especially women. Obviously, the book is directed at women, to give women hope and, chizuk, great support in a journey that is often difficult and often hard to kind of keep your head up and be like, okay, it could be the next person I meet. That sense of hopefulness, while so difficult to attain, is literally the make or break thing that I see in my practice. I definitely had given up by the time I met my husband. And I think God just said, okay, she suffered enough. Here he is. But for the most part, I see that the clients of mine that are getting married have somehow been able to retain a little bit of this optimism, hope, faith, feeling like it's okay. So this date didn't go, but it could be the next guy, and that feeling of just it's okay. He's around the corner. Now, if you're burnt out from dating, you won't be able to do this. So oftentimes it's helpful to take a break. And just, might be a break of a few weeks or a few months, just to devote yourself to yourself, self-care, self-nurturing, go travel, hang out with friends, work out, and don't worry so much about the dating, and then come back to it and revisit it, because we don't want to go out feeling bitter and cynical and jaded and this is never going to happen for me, because you bring that energy to a date and that's not very attractive or appealing. But, definitely part of my job is lifting everyone's head up and reminding them that before you were born, God picked out your person. So we just have to, play the game, do our what's called hishtadlus, which is our due diligence, just like I said in the beginning of the podcast, if you wanted a job, you have to network, send your resume out, and go on interviews. So for dating, you have to send your resume out, go network, and go on dates. And then we just leave it up to Hashem, do our best, and Hashem does the rest.
Great. That's wonderful. One of the questions on here caught my eye because I think my daughter did this one, and I know why. So, what would you say to women who are worried they'll never get the romance they envisioned? And the reason I think that was my daughter, not her friend, is because, like you were saying, that like I'm someone that is very planned out. I like everything's on a spreadsheet. I show up on time, right? But that means that like spontaneity, romance, I'm horrible at it. Like I don't know how to do that. And I know she's like observing our marriage, like I don't want my husband to be like that, like a little more romance. So, okay. So the question is, what would you say to women who are worried they'll never get the romance they've envisioned?
Great. Okay. So first of all, we want to distinguish between skill set versus character.
Okay.
So a skill set would be relationship tools, like being able to validate a woman's emotions or the 5 love languages, right? Things like that. Those are skills that could be learned by pretty much anyone out there. What we really want to be focused on is character. There is nothing, I'm sure you will agree with this, being married as long as you're married, there is nothing more important than character at the end of the day. You want someone who, I read an article once that was, marry the man who is going to hold your hair back while you throw up in the toilet as you're pregnant, like this type of thing. Okay. Sorry for the gory reference, but, life is hard and raising a family is hard and finances are hard and health is sometimes hard. Life is not meant to be a walk in the park, and you better make sure you marry someone who's a stand-up person, who has good character, who's going to be there for you through thick and thin. That is really the essence of marriage. Unfortunately, we have all, myself included, been brainwashed by Disney and Tom Hanks movies, although right. that's probably dating myself, but romantic comedies, to think that if I meet the right person, I will immediately know, because it will click and fireworks and butterflies, and I will just know immediately on the first date that I met my bashert, and we will sail off into the sunset. So I wrote a whole article on Aish.com about this. You can search my name under Aish.com. I wrote 2 articles, one of which is the myths that Hollywood has taught us. And I have an entire chapter in my book, which is probably my favorite chapter, going through various movies that I watched and the messages that it taught us about love that are incorrect. And then the next chapter is the Jewish view of love and contrasting the 2 of them. So even though we may say, oh, what? Like I of course I know those movies aren't real, but it impacts your subconscious. How many women have told me, but I don't know, I just thought I'd know right away. And I'm like, okay, you watch too many movies. So I have many, many, many happily married clients, many, like maybe more than half, that it took 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 dates, 15 dates for the attraction and the excitement to kick in to the level that, of course, you would need in order to decide this is your person. So it's really a misnomer that we're going to know right away. So that's first of all. But again, if I'm marrying the person who has the deal breaker list that I really decided was most important to me, and we share goals and values, and there's mutual respect. These are the ingredients that need to be there for a successful marriage. And there's emotional connection and physical attraction, and he has a lev tov and a growth mindset. So then everything else is just kind of skill sets, relationship tools that we're both going to learn along the way, right? How to be more romantic. The 5 love languages is hands down, in my opinion, the best relationship tool ever. Funny story, my husband and I read that book and did the quiz when we were married almost 16 years. And my husband turned to me and he said, I understand you for the first time ever.
Okay. What's the name of that book?
It's called The 5 Love Languages. You can go online to the 5 Love Languages quiz.com, but I've been told that it's not the complete quiz. So it'll help you, but really I just advise you to buy the book. And I think for our more religious crowd out there, I think that the book was made into an Orthodox version if you Google around, because they're just like a couple stories that, were edited or whatever. But this is a game changer. Just like my first language is English, but I'm fluent in French as a second language. And my husband's first language was Russian and he's fluent in English. So too, you have a mother tongue in love, meaning there is one of these five languages that you naturally give in and need to receive in to feel loved. So my example, my top love language by a long shot is acts of service, which means my husband could be giving me hugs, saying you're the best, buying me gifts and taking me out to restaurants. I won't feel that he loves me unless he lightens my load and like takes over some of my extreme amounts of burdens that I put on myself. Okay, so that's acts of service. So when he heard this and like we took the quiz, he was like, oh my gosh, like now I know how to give to you. It's literally a game changer. And I actually had my kids, there's a quiz for kids online. I had each of my 4 children take the quiz. This was many years ago. And I tried to predict their answers before the quiz came back. I think I was remarkably on target. I have one child who's physical touch. Like I could be hugging them all day and it's not enough. Now, if I didn't know that, I wouldn't be giving them the oxygen that they need to feel loved by their mother. Right? So it's a fabulous tool. So again, to circle back, we want to make sure that the person we're dating has the character traits that we're looking for, has good character, is a solid, upstanding, honorable, devoted person, and has the personality traits that match with us and the goals and values that match with us. Relationship tools and skills can be learned. So to me, it's not a deal breaker if the guy doesn't intuitively know how to give to you. Part of marriage, as you know, is being able to say, hey, I would love it if you could do this. It would make me feel amazing if you could just like load the dishwasher. I'm like so strung out right now, which is exactly what I said last night.
So one of the questions you wrote was, what is the importance of love languages? And I never heard of that, but I can, after.
Oh, I'm about to change your life.
I need to read that more than any guy on the planet. I think that would.
Okay, have your wife send me a thank you note.
She will. Okay, so I think it's a good question. She wrote, what are your thoughts on couples starting couples therapy counseling earlier in their marriage, or even maybe early in the marriage as a preventative measure?
I think it's a great idea. There's something called Shalom Task Force that has a course for engaged couples that I think is fabulous. My husband and I, we actually, when we were engaged, we did go to a therapist for a little bit because, again, there were so many cultural differences in our communication. So she was literally like an interpreter at the UN. She would say to my husband, okay, when Devorah says this is what she means, this is what she needs, and this is what you need to respond. Devorah, when he says this is what he means. Like it was literally like translation of what we were trying to say to each other.
Right. Yeah.
Now, thank God, we've worked on tremendously, and this is a question I get often is, should I consider dating someone from a different cultural background? Sephardi Ashkenazi, Russian American, Moroccan, whatever. Okay. So my answer is that's a very personal decision of whether you want to make that a deal breaker or not. Obviously I wouldn't be married had I said that's a deal breaker for me. But I will tell you, it is single-handedly our biggest challenge. So when you grow up with a certain style of communication, you can imagine Israeli, right? The Israeli style of communication is very different than American. So is Russian. So it was a process of like figuring out like, what does he mean when he says this? And how do I not get triggered, by this style of communication, right? So I wouldn't say necessarily make it a deal breaker, but go in with your eyes wide open because it's so easy.
And you did it before you got married, which I think that even makes even more sense. Just to understand.
You want to set yourself up for good systems in your marriage, So I'm all about that. I've actually, as a dating coach, I don't take on male clients for various reasons, but I will coach guys that are dating my client. And on a number of occasions, the couple has wanted to kind of have some joint coaching as they approach engagement and during engagement to just like smooth out the rough edges a little bit. Obviously, in the Orthodox world, we get what's called Chatan and Kala classes, right? This is premarital classes that are really not supposed to be solely about, the mitzvahs of married life, but also about shalom bayis, about, how to have a great marriage. My husband does a fabulous course. It's like 5 classes that he does with guys that really trains them on like how to be a great husband and what are the differences between men and women, that really will impact your marriage, and the 5 love languages and this and that. How are we supposed to know these things naturally. We won't necessarily. Even if your parents had a great marriage, it's still not something you would necessarily intuit in all of its detail. And particularly for those of us, which I think it's over 50% now, that come from divorced homes. So then for sure you want to incorporate some learning into your system of how to have, fabulous shalom bayis.
Beautiful. There's something I wanted to ask you too, is because I even noticed this with guys, like when I was in my 20s, that would literally hop from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend. Like they could not handle being single. And really what it was they didn't have confidence in themselves and they needed constant validation. And I was like, you have no business dating. If you need validation from another individual, and the same goes for a woman, you're not ready. That's my view, because like I sort of start off with the whole idea of marriage, and you've said too, is about giving, not needing to receive something. What can you speak to that?
It's really true. And I see women falling into this just as much, if not more, than men. We are a generation of low self-esteem, probably mostly due to Instagram, but moving on. A lot of people ask me, do I have to be completely healed in order to get married? And my answer to that is no. I certainly wasn't. But you want to get the process started. Like get yourself into some therapy, work on self-confidence, work on self-esteem, read books, read self-help, go on podcasts, pray, ask God to give you that inner self-confidence that's not based on external validation. But unfortunately, many of us do get sucked into this. And you're right. It is very hard to be married to one person if you have this need to be constantly validated and get approval from all of these other people. So you definitely want to work, both men and women want to work on this as much as possible before you get into the dating for marriage scene. Obviously, I do say this a lot, that marriage itself is healing. So I don't have to be completely healed to get married, but I got to be well on my journey. And then the process itself of being married to a great person who completes you is beautiful. That really does heal us. It's Hashem's magic that if we work on our marriage, we will smooth out the rough edges in ourselves. Marriage and then subsequently children really is the best boot camp for working on one's character traits, which is why Chazal, our rabbis tell us this is the entire reason we came into planet Earth, is to fix our negative traits. There's nothing better than marriage and family life to work on that. Your kids, as I'm sure you know, come into the world with your code that they can press to drive you bananas, so someone else's kid is doing the same thing and you're like, oh, they're so cute. And it's your kid, you're ready to pull your hair out. So that's on purpose. That's basher, as we say. That's custom made for us to work on ourselves. So one of the most powerful things to think about when you're married and then subsequently as a parent is that this person that I married, once I'm under the chuppah, this person that I married is basher for me. They are custom made for me to work on myself. And of course, it goes both ways. And then each child that comes into your family, and parenting, is not for the faint of heart. Hashtag why teenagers. So these children came into your family on purpose. God put them in your family. You are basher for them, and they are basher for you. And it's all this seamless, beautiful tapestry so that we can all work on our traits. And then when we get upstairs, we're going to see just how much these children caused us to grow. I heard once that our most difficult kids, the ones that really cause us the most angst, are the ones that we are going to owe the most upstairs in Olam Haba, right? In the next world, we're going to owe them the most because we had to stretch and change as a parent so much for that child and really stretch out of ourselves and give, as you were saying. That is our Olam Haba. That's our next world, is how much we stretched and grew. And if our child is always well behaved, we're not really stretching as a parent. So that was a little chizuk for the parents out there.
Yes, awesome. No, I think it's a beautiful message. Very true. Everything's being orchestrated in perfection.
Yes, we are each in our individual Truman Show, right? I love that movie. It's everyone in our life, but it all works together seamlessly.
Right.
The one thing that I would like to add, and I have a whole chapter in my book on this called Dating with Dignity, is that way before I believed in God, when I heard that there's this way to date for marriage in a way that is respectful to women and preserves a woman's dignity, where she can just, a la Jane Austen time period. He courts you, he plans the date, he pays for the date, he asks you questions about yourself, and it's totally kosher, and there's all hands are off, no touching. And then you get to evaluate without any of the intense love hormones, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, dopamine, the reward hormone, serotonin. Like, you have a cocktail of high level drugs going through your bloodstream. Scientists call this, they compare it to cocaine, right? That you are high on new love when you're physical. And therefore, you have completely lost all brain cell functioning to be able to evaluate whether this person is for you. Oxytocin in particular affects a woman far greater levels than a man. So for my ladies out there, if you have any hope of dating with clarity and with confidence and catching red flags, etc., I'm begging you, take the physical off the table, at least for the beginning of the relationship. There are women out there listening to this who may not be observant of Judaism in any way. It's fine. You can reap the rewards of this Jewish way of dating by incorporating this into your life. By the way, I've read almost every non-Jewish dating book out there, and they all say the same thing. Okay, if you jump into bed, this is not a good idea to be able to evaluate whether this person is husband material. So, we want to, number one, we want to present ourselves, as you said in the beginning with that beautiful analogy, like you're going to, a job interview as opposed to hanging out in a bar and being a hookup, right? We want to interview for the wife position. So we want to present ourselves as that, as opposed to the fling. So you want to be presenting yourself, in terms of dress that way, and you want to be holding off on physicality for as long as you possibly can. The easiest way to do this is to always be in public, right? This is the Jewish law of Yichud that I present in my book. Again, I wrote this book for a very wide audience. So if you are totally not connected to Judaism, you can pick up this book and read it and understand it and incorporate these tools into your life, as I did way before I became religious. But we want to be interviewing for the wife position. Therefore, we want to dress, speak, and behave in a way that we're interviewing for the correct job opening. Okay. So if we want to catch red flags and date smart, we want to always lead with our head and bring our heart and hormones along after, not before. This is probably the biggest difference between Orthodox dating and secular dating, is that we hold off on the physical. Obviously, Orthodox Jews wait to touch at all until marriage. But if you are out there listening to this and you're like, what? Don't you have to test drive the car? Like, that seems pretty extreme. So unfortunately, the statistics don't bear you out. Statistically, couples who, are together physically and even cohabit, like live together, their divorce rate is much higher. So if it was a fair test, I would say, okay, at least we have something to talk about, but it's not a fair test. So therefore it really makes no sense. And for my ladies out there, what's very interesting, and with this we can end, which is that if you are a woman out there and you look through your dating history and you feel like you get way too obsessed and too infatuated and too hung up, and you're stalking him and you're like, can't sleep and you're crying and all of this type of stuff, holding off on the physical actually gives a woman self-mastery of her emotions. She's able to go on dates and just be like calm and confident and like have control over her emotions. Like, if you're my husband, great. If you're not, that's also cool. Like, neither of us want to make a mistake. You hear how I'm talking even? It's just like chill. And ladies, we all know we get crazy, okay? We get crazy when the physical is involved. So I'm just begging you to take it off the table. And I will end with a story. I had a client who met with me for the first time a year and a half ago. She had just started dating a guy. I heard the whole presentation about the relationship. And I said, I have 3 things that are yellow flags, meaning they're not red flags yet. They're yellow flags, needs more data. So I'm begging you. She was a newly religious girl. I'm begging you, please hold off on the physical till we can figure out if these are red flags or not red flags. Not everyone listens to me. So she called me a year and a half later. She was out of touch with me for a year and a half, which is not using me properly. She was still with him. The yellow flags had turned into red flags. She told me, I recognize you were right. I didn't do what you said. They completely were together. And now she's so emotionally ensconced with him that she literally can't bring herself to break up with him. And I still don't know if she's broken up with him. So this is like a case study of how this works badly. If you throw yourself into the physical relationship before you've evaluated with your head, your intellect, whether this person is for you. Does he have my deal breakers? Are there any red flags? Is he respectful of me? Do we have the same goals and values and vision for the future? Ladies, please, I'm begging you, try it out. Get the book. The chapter is Dating with Dignity. Try it out. Do a scientific experiment. We don't care if 30 guys break up with you because of that, because they were not your right guy. I'm sure you will agree, Dan, that if a guy is ready for marriage and he's seriously interested in a woman, he will 100% respect her physical boundaries.
I am so glad you said that and closed off on that. Again, my daughter said, your calling in this episode, Dad, is to make sure that my holy sisters do not date anyone like that acted like you in your 20s, which is basically what I did. Even though I wasn't really interested, I was like, well, I assume we're still going to sleep together, right? And I'll be honest with you, my wife had nothing to do with that. We weren't religious, but she was like, would not participate in that. And you know what it did? It caused me to actually get to know her.
I know.
I got to know her, and I was like, I like the person.
Exactly.
Before, I don't think I even took the time to do that. So I am imploring the ladies to take Ms. Kigel's advice and take that off the table. And the guys listening may get mad at me. I don't care. Again, I'm relying on the women of Klei Yisrael to rectify this blemish in us. And it is sound advice, and definitely take it to heart.
One of my lines is that I really want to empower women out there to take back our feminine power. Unfortunately or fortunately, just is the way it is. We are the boundary makers. So that's a lot of power. That's a lot of responsibility. And guys will behave as good or as badly as you allow. So we want to teach people in our life how to treat us with respect by employing boundaries. And I promise you, ladies, the right guy for you is going to be like, okay, I hear that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on. And I would encourage, people to, buy the book for friends of yours. I specifically wrote this book for a very wide audience so that it could be easily digestible by anyone out there.
Amazing. And I want to add too that I know a lot of my audience are men, but let me tell you something, guys. I mean, you have daughters, you have sisters. It's important to share this episode, share Ms. Kigel's book. Like I said, we need the women of Klei Yisrael to bring harmony to the whole idea of how masculine and feminine are operate together. And we need them to do that. So please forward this podcast to them. Thank you so much, Devorah. It was a joy.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting Torch so they can continue to spread Torah wisdom to the world by making a donation at torchweb.org and clicking donate in the top right corner of the page.